Bobby Irvine grew up in Kilbirnie, Scotland, never far from music making, be it in choirs or brass bands. Although he did not follow a career in music, he did study voice with Neilson Taylor, who at the time was a professor at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. Bobby has had the opportunity to travel the world, appearing in some of the top concert halls, including the Royal Concert Hall in Glasgow, the Royal Albert Hall in London, the Roy Thompson Hall in Toronto, and the Phillips Sports Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. Bobby has also had the opportunity to appear on local and national radio in the UK, as well as recording his own CD. Bobby has also had the privilege of teaching at Salvation Army music schools in Scotland, the Netherlands, and California. He also heads up the Salvation Army Community Choir in Ayr, Scotland, which comprises of 120 members. Bobby currently works and lives in Ayr with his wife, Ruth, and they have 2 grown-up children, Rachel and Andrew. Bobby, it's a delight to have you on today. So thank you very much for joining. It's great to have this opportunity to meet you and just chat about singing. So thank you. Thank you.
Nice to be here. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
We'll jump straight in. So we know that singing is an integral part of our praise and worship, and that the Bible is full to bursting with scripture telling us to sing our praise to God. What importance do you place on sung worship in the church?
So I think it's of great importance. One scripture that's really helpful to me, Karl, when you speak about scripture and how it relates to worship and how it relates to singing, then there is so much, and it's clear what the intention is, to me at least, of singing. But I remember years ago hearing Chick Yule speak, and he introduced me to some scripture that I just hadn't noticed before, and it's 2 Chronicles 5 and verses 13 to 14, and I'll read it. And it says, "The trumpeters and musicians joined in unison," I love that, "to give praise and thanks to the Lord. Accompanied by trumpets, cymbals, and other instruments, the singers raised their voices in praise to the Lord and sang, 'He is good, his love endures forever.' Then the temple of the Lord was filled with the cloud, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud. Why? For the glory of the Lord filled the temple of God." And I love this notion of almost this job that we have, this wonderful privilege that we have as musicians and singers and brass players and cymbal players, or whatever we might be, where we lead people through the temple, and we lead people to this point where the music stops and the room is filled with the glory of the Lord. And sometimes music's like that. You come to a point where you can sing no more, you can play no more, but you just are in silence, and you are in the presence of the Lord. And that very much, to me, apart from praising him and expressing my love for him through music, there is this added lovely privilege of bringing people to that presence of God, and it's a great way to think of it, because I don't know what you're like, Karl, but sometimes as musicians we can be a bit egotistical, and we can think to ourselves how wonderful we are, and we can preen ourselves. And although that has some benefits, then in a spiritual setting, it's not very good. So to get this in your mind, apart from your worship, this idea of bringing people to worship is a lovely thing. I remember years ago singing in Belfast at a divisional congress, and at that time the general was General Paul Rader, and his wife was Commissioner Kay Rader. I'll be brief, but it's a little story if you've got time. I remember it was probably around 1998, 1999 or something like that. And I was singing, and at lunchtime, Commissioner K Raider said to me, she said, and do you have a CD? And I said, no, I don't have a CD. And it just felt a bit pretentious to have a CD. And she said, no. She said, it's a ministry. And it clicked this order in my mind of this notion of ministry through music. And I did make a CD. The company that I worked for at that time was a global organization, and I had a UK role in that organization. And my boss, who was in Helsinki, that's where he was based, he found out about the CD. So he said, great. He said, we'll put your CD in all the Christmas hampers to all the regional managers right across the globe. That was 52 regional managers from China to India to USA, Canada, all over Europe. So they all got this CD. And our department secretary, who was baking up some of the hampers, I walked up into the office one day, and it was an open plan office with about 20 people in it. And there was this song thundering out because she had the CD playing in her PC, and it said, would you be free from your burden of sin? There's power in the blood, there's power in the blood. And never for a moment did I think that when I made that CD, that in my workplace, with the people that I worked with, I would be singing that song with those words. So yes, it's a ministry.
Yeah, certainly. That's a very, very cool story to have.
There you go.
Definitely. When we return to singing here in the UK, at least, many of us will have gone well over a year without singing and singing and making music with other people. From the perspective of, I guess, both a soloist and a chorister, what will you be cautious of when returning to singing? So
if you, I guess if you can imagine how you would approach any rehearsal. So perhaps you haven't sung since last week, and the way you approach that rehearsal is to gently get the body, the voice, the mind, and the spirit engaged with this thing called singing. And essentially, after a long break like this, then it's the same principle. It's getting people to focus on what the purpose is of what we're doing. And I really believe that from a singing point of view, set technique aside, if you can get a group of people, or you as an individual singer, and if you can get clear in your mind what the purpose is, what's the intent, it does affect your singing, and it affects the collective singing as well. And then once you've established that purpose, once you've done a bit of larking around, and getting the body moving, then you need to think about basic technique as you warm back up. So it's breathing, it's voice placement, it's that business of connecting the breath to the voice again, vowel sounds and so on. And there are lots of good songs that have long notes in them and are easy to breathe through, that are good for that kind of reintroduction back into singing again.
Following on from that, we'll go on to chat about vocal health and looking after our voices. So firstly, have you ever come across any vocal health issues, either for yourself or anyone you've worked with, or or conducted in a choir, or wherever?
So I've never come across any vocal health issues. I've been fortunate in that I've never had any. Everybody who sings has the usual stuff. So you can have like a respiratory infection, or you can have a throat infection, and it affects your singing, I guess, in two broad categories. Now, I'm not an expert in this at all, Karl. So, but this is just my experience. And of course, if it's the respiratory thing, so if it's chest infection of some kind, then it's always a tricky one, because you sometimes think that your voice is fine. And particularly if you're a soloist and you take a chance and you stand up on a stage or in some kind of concert, and as soon as you start to take in a deep breath, then you'll know whether you still have that chest infection or not, because you start coughing through your whole performance, and that can catch you out. So that's a kind of obvious one. The other one's throat infection. So if you get any inflammation in the cords at all, then of course you just don't sing, and you don't talk, if that is possible as well. because all you'll do is you'll just keep that information going for longer than need be. So just don't use them, be silent, and let the information go down. So to me, it's kind of broadly two categories like that.
Yeah, and how would you look after your own voice? So do you have a routine or anything like that before you do sing? Or if you can feel, something that isn't quite right, is there something you do to react to that and to maintain your vocal health?
Yeah. So my sister, she is a singer, and a different kind of singer from me. She's an opera singer, so it's a much bigger voice. It's a much more athletic voice than my voice has ever been. It's trained to be a different kind of thing. And I remember when we were both young and doing a lot of singing, then from her singing teacher, who then became my singing teacher, it was just this maxim of sing every day. And if you ask any other kind of musician, whether it's a woodwind, brass, keyboard, it's this business of the singing just being part of your everyday routine. So find somewhere in the day just to sing. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't even need to be a full voice. But if you just keep that voice going over and get the opportunity, and then as you had hinted in your question there, I guess, then you'll realize what kind of shape your voice is in. And I guess then it's about building that up, doing your daily exercises. It's all about breathing, never singing from the throat, always connecting. Think always about connecting that breath to the voice the whole time. So there are lots of different exercises you can do to do that. But it's just about singing every day. That's the basic one for me.
Yeah, I think that's good advice to take note of, definitely. So I understand that you have done a lot of work with the community choir at your core. Would you share a little about that, how it started, why, and how it's going now, and maybe even touch upon if there's anything you've done throughout the pandemic or anything like that?
So the community choir has now been on the go for, it will be 11 years this year. So we had a 10-year celebration last year, which was a lot of fun, which was good. I mentioned, as a result of one of your other questions about the purpose of singing and how it was important to me that singing was a ministry. And about 11 years ago at the core, we were looking at ways of new ministries. Very clearly, I won't bore you with the whole story, Karl, but just I'll try and do this as quickly as possible. Scripture-based, parable of the talents, and it really spoke to me, which was, we all have different talents. We have them to varying degrees. As you know the parable, the master goes, he says, when I come back, he says, I want to see what you've done with those talents. And he says, I'll be back quite soon, so don't hang about. So the master goes, and one of the servants with the talents, he buried them, and he sat on it until the master came back, and he said, look, I've kept it as it is. There it is. And the master wasn't pleased with that. And then, of course, there's a bit of a variation from that to the guy who came top of the class. And he said, well, I took what you gave me and I did something with it. And I tried to get a return on this talent that you gave me. And that was the one that the master was pleased for. So that was the parable that stuck in my mind. And particularly at that time, I had a frustration just generally about the Salvation Army, that I had a concern that we, from a musical point of view, and as musicians, we had been given so much, we've been trained so much through our music schools and through our local leaders who, as we were growing up in the Salvation Army, we've been given so much and we've learned so much. And I was concerned that we were sitting on it. I was concerned that we had the doors closed, the windows closed, we were sitting inside our halls, and we were providing this to each other and trying to teach each other, and somewhere or another preserve, like a museum, what had happened before. Whereas that's not what we're called to do as Christians. It's like, you've been given all this stuff, so do something with it. And that's what we did. We already had a network of friends throughout the town because we had been homeless for such a long time as a core. So we used everybody's church hall, we used everybody's community hall. So we had all this connection with the community anyway. We had a special occasion. We organised it well. We just put out a notice in the local newspaper, and it was a come and sing, no addition. It was try this out. Would you like a social evening? Would you like to get to know other people? Would you like to do it in a safe space? So it was that kind of tone to the whole thing. Right from the start, we advertised when the rehearsals would be, when the concert would be, and the purpose of the concert, which was to raise money for a charity. So it was clear that there was a goal here. So it had all those elements in it. On the first night, we set out, I think, about 25 chairs. We thought maybe 25 people would show up. So 49 showed up in the first night. And it just was a nice group of people. The choir, 10 years later, it has a big register of over 200 people that are on the list of the choir, but each concert you only get about 100, 120 that actually take part in the summer concert or the Christmas concert, and then smaller choirs for different things that we do. But it's a nice bunch of people. People make it a night out. We have groups within the group. So we have, for example, the dinner ladies, who are a group of young mums who are all dinner ladies at a local primary school. They used to take their kids to mums and tots, and then the kids grew up and they thought, what can we do? Well, we heard about this choir that runs at the Salvation Army. So that's their night out as a group of mums. They come along to the choir, and there are lots of groups within the group that do that kind of thing. So it's always got to have purpose. We always do it with a good attitude, and we work hard, and we try and raise money. We've raised about £42,000 over the last 10 years for various charities, including the Salvation Army.
That's an amazing story and an amazing testimony as well, to be able to reach out to so many people, and no doubt so many lives have been touched, and God has spoken to those people in so many different ways through the work that you're doing. So yeah, that's really fantastic and so encouraging to hear. Thank you for sharing about that. Do you have a favorite singer or choral ensemble? Anyone in the world?
So I don't know if you have children, Karl, but asking me if I've got a favourite singer, it's like saying which is your favourite child. That's a difficult one. There are singers who are significant, and there is a group that is significant. So the first singer who is significant is Dame Janet Baker. So I grew up in a musical home, and so Dame Janet Baker was a favourite of my parents. My parents were so influential; they were very musical. Mother was a super singer, great voice. So it takes me back to that formation of appreciation of singing. And later in life, when I then looked back and listened to Janet Baker singing, it's this absolute clarity and purity and honesty, and she has a faith, and she treats sacred music so well. And it's just a lovely repertoire as well. Fantastic. The other one from a tenor, I'm not a tenor, probably I like baritone, but there's a tenor called Jonas Kaufmann, a German. So I would recommend anybody, Spotify, wherever you can, listen to Jonas Kaufmann. If you're a male singer, listen to Jonas Kaufmann. It is such a passionate voice. It's full on. It's totally committed. It's big. It's romantic, and it's just so expressive. And it's just sheer expertise. Vocal expertise, and just a phenomenal. So I would recommend anybody, particularly male singers, get yourself a recording, listen to Jonas Kaufmann, German tenor, just fabulous. And he does a lot of broad repertoire, commercial stuff as well, fabulous. As far as groups are concerned, then again, there are too many to pick from, but from a choral chorister point of view, then it's got to be the King's Singers. And again, the age that I am, then I can go back to when the King's singers became very popular in the 70s. And then, of course, the personnel has changed right throughout the years. And it's now a young group of guys who are just phenomenal. And again, it's about, from a chorister's point of view, from a choral point of view, it's about blend, tone, intonation, tuning. And it just brings every chord alive. That whole technique, it just they bring chords alive, and once they do that, then they can tell the story so well, and it's clever stuff as well. You've just got to admire how clever it is, and the variety of what they do. They're just phenomenal choristers and great musicians.
Yeah, it's agreed with that. Do you have any musical highlights in your time ministering musically that you'd want to share?
I could share a lot of disasters.
Please do.
I could probably share with you more disasters than highlights, and lots of wrong choices. Sorry, I'm taking your conversation off in a different direction.
No.
But I suppose there's a reason to some of the disasters, because the disasters, then it gives you a background to what the highlights then are. So I had been taught to sing in a particular way. I could sing ballads. I could sing oratorio. That was the way through my singing teacher how it was done, and that's how I learned to sing. That's where I was comfortable, and that's what I knew what to do and how to do it. And then I did a lot of singing for the army, as well as the singing that I do outside the army. But I started doing a lot of singing for the army. And at that time, I was listening to what other people in the army were singing. And there was a lot of this kind of pseudo big band type thing that was going on at the time. And I thought, well, maybe I should try some of that. Maybe I should try and be, trendy myself up a bit instead of doing something from Elijah. So I remember I had a lovely invitation from Kenneth Downey to go to Winchester and sing at one of his lovely concerts. And I decided to do this kind of swing thing with a backing track. Oh my goodness. And I could see his face in the audience thinking, what is he doing? It was just, from a singing point, and I felt it myself. I was so uncomfortable doing it. And then I went to, very shortly after that, I was still on this trend of trying to do this big band stuff and make myself quite trendy. And I went to the Millennial Congress, which was in Atlanta, Georgia in the year 2000. And I sang at that, and I did a concert. I think it was the Southern Territories Band accompaniment or something. And it was a big band number type thing. And I kind of fumbled my way through this and tried to do it justice. And then after it, I sang, I think it was a beautiful arrangement by Robert Dibdin from Air of My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose to the words God's love to me is wonderful. Right in my comfort zone. That's what I knew how to do. And I sang that. After it, there was a lady came up to me, Beatrice Hill Holtz, and I had known her from years ago when I was at Star Lake, and a fantastic musician, wonderful teacher, always imparting great knowledge. And she came up to me afterwards, because she came to hear me sing. She came up afterwards, and it's lovely to see you and all that kind of stuff. She said, now, she said, the first one, not you. She says, but the second one, that's your song. So don't do that again. So she was right.
That's very topical, because I interviewed B last week. So she's on this series, yeah.
Oh,
so
great.
It's a great link.
Fabulous. Well, there's a lot to learn there, and such a well-respected educator, and just so much to learn. There's so much to learn. But it was a gem for me, because it's an important lesson, which is know your repertoire and stick to your repertoire, and don't try to be something else. And when I've done that, then the musical highlights have come along. And I was introduced to a lovely arrangement of, so this is show music, Climb Every Mountain, but both are actually show tunes. Climb Every Mountain from The Sound of Music. Philip Harper did a great arrangement with the Corey band. Fabulous arrangement, voice and band. And I've done a few performances of that. It was Alan Ramsey, who former bandmaster of Govan at that time, was leading the Glasgow cooperative band, and we did a concert in the Royal Concert Hall in Glasgow. So you get a big venue like that, good sound system, fabulous band, and you can have fun with a big set piece like that. And it's a big song. I then did it in the Roy Thompson Hall with the Canadian Staff Band with John Lamb, and it was a similar setting. And those big set pieces are a lot of fun. So that's one kind, but the other kind is a song that I've sung for years and years and years and years. People keep asking for it. I keep on singing it, and it's Bring 'Em Home, again with a great friend of mine, Robert Dibden, on piano. And every time we do it, we've sung it at very, very small venues, very large venues, and everything in between. But it's just a wonderful song about yearning and about praying for others, and it has such an impact. And every time we sing it, it's like fresh, it's like new. So out of all the repertoire, then that song, for some reason, for both of us, and it's a real collaboration, it just seems to be fresh and new every time we sing it. Yeah, so probably each time I sing that would probably be a musical highlight. Mm-hmm. And you make it an offering and the Spirit does the rest.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's been really, really interesting to hear from you and hear a bit of your story. So thank you.
You're welcome. I am praying, a beautiful, fine song by Len Ballantine, and beautiful words. If you're a Salvationist and if you're involved with a Salvation Army group, then the words you'll be familiar with. And what Len Ballantine has done in this song is he's just so well connected the shape or the arc of the music with this notion of pleading. So there's this shape to it, and the notion of pleading the whole time. So these words that we associate with this song. But if we are a group who are getting back together, perhaps after a long break, or if you're a group even getting together for the first time, perhaps some new members after your break, then it's always important just to think about what we're doing as a group. It's important to think about engaging three things in singing. You've got to engage your body, you've got to engage your mind, and you've got to engage your voice in this whole game. Years ago, there's a lady called Leslie Nicholson, and years ago, Leslie introduced to a choir I was singing a fun song for a warm-up. And it's My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, My Bonnie Lies Over the Sea, where Leslie would get the group to stand up. And every time you came to a word that began with B, you had to sit down. So before long going through this song, you're standing up, you're sitting down, you're trying to think which words have got a B in it. So the body's engaged, the mind is engaged, and you're singing at the same time. So it's a good exercise. These kind of exercises are good because they're engaging the body, the mind, and the voice, all of which you need to be able to sing effectively. If you want something that's a bit more challenging than rather just sitting down on the word be and standing back up again, then I would recommend that you go to YouTube and you find Johnny Howard of the King's Singers in YouTube. And he's got a series of very useful little YouTube clips. I think he did some of them in lockdown, actually. Now, he does a version of My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, but in that one, you're not only standing up, sitting down, but you're turning around, you're standing on one leg, you're moving back, you're moving forward. So you might need a bit more space to do the Johnny Howard version. But it's worth a look. Use these ideas as a leader and introduce them to your group. And it gets rid of so many inhibitions as well. So that when you've done that, you've got rid of the inhibitions, so you can then speak about how to develop this voice that we're going to use. And also, as a group, because you've done it as a group, then the group start to feel as if they're united. And if a group feels united, it helps the singing. It makes the singing feel more unison, and it helps the whole tone of the singing. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Before you get to the song, do something fun that's going to engage the body, the mind, and the voice. Okay, so the next thing I would look at before we get singing, I would think about breathing, because it's the root of all of our singing. We do it when we speak without thinking about it, and this breath is supporting this voice the whole time. So it's really important that somewhere in your rehearsals, preferably at the beginning, that you just think about breathing and then how the breath connects to the sound. So it's good to do exercises like those relaxing sighs that we all do. That kind of thing. And before you know it, accidentally, you've taken in breath, you've opened up the mouth, which is a space that vowels can be formed in, and you're connecting that breath to the voice and you're tapering it off towards the end. So get your group to yawn and to sigh and to make noises like, ah. And you can hear, even as you move through that sound the way I did it, it starts off quite bright and it ends up quite airy. Not a bad thing, because as your group develops, you need to be able to have bright vowel sounds, and you need to, in that vowel space, have broad, relaxed, airy sounds as well. So although it sounds an odd thing to do it, have fun doing it, and think about connecting this breath to the voice the whole time. And it's an easy way to do it. So, of course, you can't turn up to Len's song and just yawn or sigh all the way through it. We actually need to have something that's a bit more formed than that. And we need to have a lovely voice. And those voices can be in unison or they can be in parts. Obviously, your group's going to be divided into those with higher voices and lower voices. And there's some things you need to consider if you're trying to teach your group some vocal technique about where the lower voices lie and where the higher voices lie. And there's not really the time to go into that in this little video. But you need to keep these things in mind, because as you approach this song, you'll find that there's a whole lot of mid-range in this song, but there's a key change in it where things brighten up a bit. So you need to be able to explain to your group as things brighten up at the key change, that the voice may need to be up in the head as opposed to down here in the chest or in the middle. But even before that, I would encourage you to get your singers to find out where their voice is. And voice placement is really important. And there's a lovely story about the fabulous singer, Dame Janet Baker, that right throughout her career, before every performance, she would have to find her voice placement. And she had a little routine where she would go, as if she was surprised. And it's a great thing, and I've tried it myself, and it does work. And if you go, and then sing after it, you find that your voice gets into a lovely place, and it goes, and everything has opened up. So, but just by doing that, as if you're surprised, it can really help people get the idea that you place your voice somewhere and you get this bright, not a dull sound, but it's a bright sound. So you go, ah, and it's a nice open vowel. So that's another thing that's worthwhile thinking about. So we've thought about getting the group engaged with the mind and the body and the voice. We've thought about this breathing. We've thought about connecting it to a sound. We speak all the time, but we need to develop that into a singing voice. We've thought about lower voices and higher voices and where we would use them in this piece. You need to, as a conductor, be aware of that. And then this business of actually singing a lovely vowel sound in this vowel space and how you get that voice placement. So if you've done that kind of stuff, I think your group would be in a reasonable shape. If they haven't sung for a while, or as I say, maybe a group that's coming together for the first time, then I think it's perhaps worthwhile looking at this lovely, lovely song. I spoke earlier on about this song by its nature being a prayer, and it pleads. It has a yearning quality to it. And the reason I say that is that if you're standing up in front of a group and you're going to take this group through the song, you need to give the group some kind of context. You need to get them unified in the intent of this song, because that will help the singing. So you need to tell that story. And when we turn to this song, then it's got some lovely long notes, lovely unison singing. So the ladies start off with that lovely unison singing at the beginning, and the interval goes down at the end of each phrase, and it goes down at the end of each phrase. So it's like this lovely sigh that we did in our exercise at the beginning. So this time we've got a number of bars, and then it goes down. The gentlemen, they then pick up the same thing in unison again. So they need to think as one, with one intent, getting their voice placement right, making sure that it's a nice open vowel sound, and they do the same thing. So you've just had this almost exercise for the ladies in the first half, and then the exercise for the gents as they do it. So you can use this song very easily to ease yourself into singing. One thing that I've noticed, and I don't know, I've noticed it particularly with, and I'll probably receive some criticism for saying this, but I've noticed it particularly with some Salvation Army groups. And there's a tendency to be dull in our approach to singing. So we tend to sing under notes. I don't know whether it's because we feel as if we've got a job to do and we turn up and we open the books and it's a Sunday or it's a concert and we'll get on with it, and then somebody does this and it's a bit workmanlike. And it can sometimes be quite dull, this workmanlike attitude. But we need to avoid dull singing, and we need to avoid singing under notes. So one thing that really helps us with that is to ensure that your singing has got energy in it, that it's got vitality in it. Now, this song has got long phrases with long arcs and long notes. That's not a license to be dull and to sing under and say, I've begun the note, look at your watch. Have I finished the note yet? No, I haven't quite finished it yet. I've got another bar and a half to go. All right, let's do the next phrase after that. Long notes are not an excuse to sing dull or to sing under a note. They are an opportunity to sing bright and to keep energy and vitality, even in a long note. So if you listen to the piano accompaniment in this song, this is a lovely flowing piano accompaniment that's going underneath these long arcs of phrases. And in your mind as a singer, you need to have that metronome going in your mind. You need to have that vitality, even if it's a long phrase, still have that vitality. There's a lovely little exercise that a lot of choral people use. And to get vitality into singing, you could sing a long note. You could go, ah. This song is la, da, 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 da. And it could be boring and flat, right? A lot of choral conductors, to get energy and vitality into singing, they use a little exercise, which is they say to the people in the choir, can you imagine that you're at the choir or the songster practice and your best friend comes in and you've got an empty seat behind you and you see them from the other side of the hall and you gesture to them, you say, come and sit here, come and sit here. Get your choir to try that. So they go this, come and sit here, come and sit here. And then you sing, ah. And then you've got a voice that's got energy in it and it's got vitality. And then you've got that long phrase, la, da, 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 da. You see, it's got life in it, it's got vitality in it, and because it's a slow, pleading, yearning song, doesn't mean to say that you bore the pants off your listener, and it doesn't mean to say that it becomes this boring, mournful sound. Unless you're singing Dido's Lament and you're just about to fall off your perch, then you don't need to be singing in such terms. It's a pleading, it's a yearning, so you've got to get this voice, even in this, that you've got to get energy and vitality into the voice. So really work hard at that with your choir, and really work hard at it in these long notes. Singers subdivide along with the piano, that this is going along, and this is that there is rhythm in this all the way through. Another important thing is ebb and flow in singing. And again, we've got these lovely phrases where you could go la da dee da 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 da, and it could go on forever and ever and ever and be a bit shapeless. The piano's moving along, it has ebb and flow. So try and get la da da la da da, and that ebb and flow. And again, it brings more life and it brings more vitality, and it allows you to emphasize the words, and it allows you to tell the story more. If you don't do that, we just end up with this flat, horrible thing that turns everyone off and sends people to sleep. So that vitality's got to be there. Don't be fooled by the long notes or the long arc of the phrase. And then there's a little pet hate of mine, and this is probably to do maybe if you're a solo singer, but there's this business, brass players think about it this way a lot as well, but as a singer, if you can get yourself to a point where you think about releasing a phrase. Now, by releasing a phrase, I don't mean that you just go, you don't want to sing la da dee da 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 da, and it just ends, and it, you know, has no life or vitality. But you need to come to the end of a phrase and you need to release it in time. Okay, so the accompaniment, you can hear that subdivision going from the accompaniment, la da 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 da, and release that phrase before you move on to the next one. So you get that springboard, and all of a sudden you'll find that if you treat a phrase, an arc properly, and if you release that phrase at the end, it'll springboard you onto the next phrase. Because the way Len has written this, there's a lot of similarity between one phrase and another phrase. And if you don't release that first phrase, the second sentence doesn't make the same sense. So if you were speaking that poetry, you wouldn't just come to the end full stop, drop off a cliff and then start again. You release the phrase and then you start the next phrase again. So avoid the dull singing, get vitality in it, use the ebb and flow. There are long notes in here, don't be fooled by it. Think about subdivision, release your phrases at the end so you can move on to the next phrase, and you'll find that you then have the tools, that's just the beginning, the tools to tell the story. The way the song is constructed is this beautiful, beautiful presentation of some unison singing through the first verses. And then eventually we come across the SATB arrangement, where everybody gets involved, and it's a much warmer, it's an opportunity for a much warmer sound. And I hope you achieve a much warmer sound when the sopranos, the altos, tenor, basses start to sing in harmony and sing in parts. What I would be thinking about when you get to this part and as you rehearse this part, it's important to think about blend and balance. Blend of tone of voices and balance. You don't want people to lose their own voices. People have their own voices, and people's own voices are lovely and precious and wonderful. And you don't want to lose their voices. But what you want to do in order to release the chords and to release the energy that chords produce that Len has written in this song, then you do need to pay some attention to some kind of blending. And you do need to work towards some kind of unity of tone. And some of the basic ways to do that, the most obvious is through vowel sounds. So you may have your own voice, your neighbour has got their own voice, but if you produce vowel sounds in the same way, it helps bring that tone together. And that's really, really useful. And if you can achieve that, that's a great thing. So as you move into your SATB section, then think about the group moving into similar vowel sounds. So you just need to make sure that you're producing the same vowels all the way along. Don't be frightened to use exercises in your group where you can experiment with vowel sounds. So you may want to do it in your exercise piece where you can have bright vowel sounds, ah, that right up here, and you can go from ah to a much broader space at the front. There's nothing wrong with one or nothing wrong with the other. But if you can get the group to experiment and convince the group that they can make different types of vowel sounds, then do that with your group, and then they get to know what the tools are, so that if you speak about unity of vowel sounds and getting the tone together, if they've tried these things and they get a feel for it, especially if it's maybe someone who hasn't done much singing, but if you can introduce these ideas to them about bright vowel sounds and broader, warmer vowel sounds, and then listen to the difference between the two, and that's how you start to get your group to start to use the vowel sounds. The other thing that I would do just generally on this song, and I've spoken about it before, and it's about the common understanding of the intent in the song. Never underestimate how powerful that can be. If a group can sing with one intent, then they have a much better chance of singing with one voice, I think, in my experience. And this is about pleading. Pleading what? It's pleading each precious promise. And you don't need to be as Scottish as me as you say the word precious promise either. You can soften that a bit. But if you can get this group to think about the intent of this song, wonderful words by Fanny Crosby, about pleading each precious promise, even that in itself, if you can get that intent together, you'll find it will help the vowel sounds, it'll help the intonation, it'll help the voice placement, it'll help the ebb and flow, it'll help the arc of the song, because Len has skillfully done it deliberately, and it's just lovely the way it's all done. And there's a lovely, I think it's a 3/2 bar that's in there as well, and it just comes to the end of a phrase, and it's just a lovely little device that just lets you rest at the end of that phrase, and it'll allow you to release it before you move on. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in it. I think what I would say finally, and it is linked to the intent, for your group, take care of your group, especially if you're involved in groups like I am through the community choir that I do, where people have sometimes no concept of singing, no concept of sacred music. So take care of them, look after them, never speak down to anyone, never make a fool of them, regardless of whether you get the technique right. Encourage people to give something of themselves when they sing, encourage people to tell the story, encourage people to use body language, do your exercise of My Bonny Lies Over the Ocean. Get people to smile when they're singing, get people to sing through their eyes, get them to be sincere, get people to be comfortable but moving slightly. We don't need to stand there like a row of soldiers. A lot of choirs do this thing where even individuals in the choir will move at a slightly different pace than the person sitting next to them. And it just brings a whole energy to the whole choir. A lot of American youth choirs do it, university choirs. They do this lovely thing where it's almost a swaying. and it's just it brings a lovely energy to it. So if you're dealing with singers who don't have a lot of experience, then really take care of them, look after them. I have had some of my most moving musical experiences from people who have a whole lot of challenges when it comes to singing. I'm involved with a community choir, and we have one lady who wouldn't dream of singing in the core songster brigade. She has some physical challenges that would prevent her from doing that in such a small group. But she came along to the large group. She sang in her first concert. She sang in her first concert, and she was right in front of me as I was conducting, with both sticks on that occasion. She had set aside her frame, but she had both sticks, and she made sure that she was able to stand up. She had a phenomenal group of ladies around her who were so sensitive to her particular challenges, who made sure that she got onto stage properly and safely, who made sure that she had music there at the right time, at the right page, and the unity of the singing meant that she was part of that whole thing. Now, the reality is, because of some of the physical challenges that she had, then it would be difficult for her to achieve things that other people would achieve. But singing allows her to be part of this corporate experience. Whether it's faith-based or not faith-based, it's doing something together. It's very powerful. So really encourage people from that point of view in their singing. And you can use a song like this lovely song from Len, and it's not too difficult, and I think most people should be able to cope with it. So I think that's all I've got to say, Karl, on that song.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Again, yeah, really, really great to hear your insight, and just helps us understand singing better, to just hear from other people's perspectives. So thank you so much for spending time today and chatting to me. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.